So you need to be mentored, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You need a mentee. Actually need to start investing in other people, because as soon as are not investing, you become the Dead Sea instead of the Sea of Galilee. The Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee are fed by the same river, but
Mm.
one stuff flows out and one only takes in. And when you only take in, it becomes stagnant and dead, and it's really rich. It's full of minerals, it's full of stuff, but it's dead.
What's up, fam? It's Josiah. We just got back from the West Coast Young Adults Today Leader Conference. It was amazing, but you don't have to take my word for it. Check out what some of the attendees had to say. Yo, I'm here at the West Coast Conference with
Jared.
And man, what an amazing couple days. Do you have a highlight or a takeaway?
Yeah, I just think that it's such a awakening to come together and just see the value in creating relationships with other people. And you so often, especially in this ministry, feel very alone. And there are people, maybe not in every single church, maybe not in every city, but there are people doing the same thing. And it's so important that we can come together, share ideas, and it's so much more rewarding. It's actually more fun when we're doing this together.
Dude, we're better together.
All right. Well, we are here at the West Coast Leadership Conference with Young Adults Today, and I'm here with two ladies. What are your guys' names?
My name is Cybele.
And I am Shelby Scott.
So I'm here with Cybele and Shelby. And if you ladies could just describe one takeaway that you've had thus far into this conference, what is one thing you feel like God's been showing you, downloading to you, or something that you would like to put in your leadership, or whatever direction you want to go? What has He been speaking?
So for me, I feel like this conference really brings out the realism and like the realistics of what young adults are today and what they're experiencing. Just for me, just the takeaway is just how we can lead young adults like today, like those who are on fire for Jesus and those who are just like seeking for Jesus as well. We are like their shepherds. We are the ones who are like supposed to be guiding them and then just shepherding them into getting to know who Jesus is and actually knowing what to have a relationship is. And that's just my takeaway for this conference is.
Yes, that's so strong and so powerful. Okay, Miss Shelby, what do you got?
Oh man, I took so many notes, and there's been so many incredible panel speakers and speakers in general. And I think one of the things that I'm really kind of mulling over is this conversation about doubts and wrestling, and not just for the young adult, but for even me as a leader. Like, we talked about how doubt can be a bad thing, but it can also be a really good thing, and it being almost an invitation into asking the questions that reflect the true like hunger for the Lord. And so as a young adult leader, giving space for doubt is really an invitation for the young adult to say, how can you take this deeper into a deeper longing, almost like that inner being, like what are you yearning for the truth on, and how can I redirect that back to the Lord and not just minimizing doubt. So that was a huge takeaway. I'm very excited, very jazzed up.
Okay, I'm here with
Victoria Dudek.
And Victoria, you're a hero of mine. How many years in young adult ministry?
15. Sometimes on staff, sometimes not on staff, but always plugged into young adult ministry.
New Life Church, incredible. Thanks for your leadership and serving so well. We've been at the West Coast Leader Conference the past couple days. Do you have a highlight or takeaway?
I have absolutely loved seeing other young adult pastors and leaders just talking about where they're doing ministry. It's so encouraging to see what God is doing in different cities around the country. Like his heart is for these people. And so I've loved just hearing their stories about what the Lord is up to. Mm-hmm.
He's doing a new thing. God is like legit moving. There's a hunger in Gen Z. We're seeing it across the U.S. What's up, guys? It's Josiah Kennelly. This is the Young Adults Today podcast. And man, we're in for a treat. Mentoring is a vital, important thing. One generation is to tell the next of the marvelous deeds of God, as Psalm 145:4 commands us. It's an all hands on deck commission. We need to be obedient. And thanks for your obedience, for starting, for strengthening young adult ministries in your communities. But have you ever wondered what's the difference between a coach and a mentor? We talk with Dr. Charles Porter, who served as a global worker in several different continents. He is in his 50s, but for over 25 years, he has been investing in the faith of the next generation. We have an amazing conversation talking about the importance of having a coach. Stay tuned. He shares a giveaway. The first 50 who respond to the link that's in today's episode show notes will give you a free coaching assessment. He's giving this to you for free. I'm pumped. Thanks so much, Charles. And on to our conversation, but be sure to check out the show notes for some great freebies like this one from Charles Porter, because we all need a coach. We all need to grow. Self-awareness is key. Let's dive in. Well, we are here with Charles Porter. Welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm great. Excited to be here. Thanks, guys.
For sure. Charles, my mom recently asked me, because Micah and I, we joined a mastermind of like business leaders, ministry leaders. This is a couple, 2-3 years ago, about the time we launched a nonprofit, Young Adults Today. And my mom asked me just the other night, she goes, "Do you miss the mastermind?" And I go, "No shade, no disrespect. It was great. I liked it, but I don't miss it at all. Not that format." But then I told her, I go, "I miss my life coach every day." And because a few years ago, the life coach that I had, probably from age 23 to about 30, he passed away. He went to be with Jesus. And so almost every day, what I miss is the holding your feet to the fire, or the feedback loop of, we're going to meet next week or next month. And we just set some audacious goals. We just prayed together. And now I got to do something with it, because I'm going to show up to a meeting either unprepared and I did nothing, or I'm going to share about the next step and get insight. And so I want to ask you, what's the difference in your opinion between really mentorship and coaching?
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of my passion, my area. I've always invested in young adults, but there's a big difference. Simple metaphor. If you have a jug, in mentorship, you're putting in something that you don't have. In coaching, you're digging the well of what is there. And so the fundamental difference, okay, go ahead.
No, say that again.
So
One
the
more time. I'm
fundamental
tracking.
difference is the great metaphor is a jug of water, a jug of juice, whatever. A mentor puts in what you don't have. A coach pulls out what you do have. So everybody is born with the image of God. Everybody is born a genius. I'm sure you've talked to, a lot about the research that showed at 3-4 years old, NASA did this study, and 98% of children tested creative genius. At 18, they tested the same kids, and only 2% tested creative genius.
My goodness.
We had convinced people that they were not geniuses. So we have educated into systematized, and there's a lot of conversation about this, we industrialized people and systems and whatever, and we've killed the creativity from people. So there's genius for everyone who's created in the image of God. Think about even the theological concept. We're created in the image of God. I mean, the creativity that God paints every evening at the sunset is beyond our wildest imagination, okay? So you have that, and every person has that level of genius within them. Sometimes you need somebody to pull it out of you, to look into your life and to see what you don't even know is there. And a coach does that by asking you questions, by giving you, if you have a coach who's giving you information, they're not coaching you, they're mentoring you. Now, it's also true that we get sometimes in life, we don't know what we don't know, right? When I was getting my biggest regrets as a young adult, I didn't invest money for retirement. Jesus is going to come. We don't need to worry about that. But
Totally.
the truth is that I wouldn't have known how.
Wow.
There weren't Robinhood. There wasn't all these little apps to get started. I didn't understand so I didn't know what I didn't know. And a mentor should be a good combination of someone who sees the value in you, sees this, but is able to give you something that you don't have. And so that's why I always think it's important. Well, my kind of rule of thumb is a mentor should be 1 to 2 stages in life ahead of you. So you guys have children?
Yeah.
Or you're thinking about kids, okay, young age, right? I'm not going to mentor you. Why? Because my kids are teenagers. I don't know if I've done it right yet. Right? We have all these blogger moms or whatever telling each other, you don't know. because you think you're right, but you have no evidence that your kids are going to turn out. I want somebody whose kids are in their 20s and are mature, stable adults
Yeah.
walking through life in a healthy way. I want that person to speak in my life. So I have teenagers now. I want somebody whose kids have gone through college, who are now working in the professional world, establishing their families. That's the kind of mentor I want, but they need to be in a different stage of life than me. That's for a life mentor. Now, professional development mentor is different. Like you guys could probably teach, we're talking some technical stuff before we started here. You guys could teach me, you could mentor me on podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
on something that you have a professional expertise where you could add value to my life, but it's going to be in a scope that's more limited. So there's different kinds of mentors that you look for. And then the coach is a person who comes in and says, you know what, you say you want to do this. It's why not? What's challenging begins to challenge mindsets and thought patterns, which are so powerful because we pick all these things up from childhood and we get these ideas that we're not geniuses
Oh my
and we're
gosh.
not creative, but we are.
Oh my gosh. It's like the NASA study you just cited. What the word picture I get is kind of conform to the mold, compare yourself to everyone, kind of fall into line, and will tell you you're not a genius. I mean, that was my experience in life coaching is 95% at least of it was hard questions that I had to look within. And I was maybe going there expecting the download, expecting the information, like expecting to be poured into, to use that metaphor. But it was really, Proverbs talks about a wise person draws out the wisdom
Mhm.
from you. And so I do think what you're saying about coach, mentor is so powerful. Have most people never experienced a coach?
Most people think they've experienced coaching because they've done some sort of junior high, they've gone through high school athletics,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That is a coach, but it's not the kind of coaching that we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. So I have this thing, if you five fingers, five relationships every person needs. Okay. Mentor, coach, counselor, confidant, mentee.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you need to be mentored, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You need a mentee. Actually need to start investing in other people because as soon as are not investing, you become the Dead Sea instead of the Sea of Galilee. The Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee are fed by the same river, but one stuff flows out and one only takes in. And when you only take in, it becomes stagnant and dead, and it's really rich. It's full of minerals, it's full of stuff, but it's dead because it's not giving out. So you need a mentor, you need a mentee, a coach. We'll talk a little bit more about that. Everybody needs a therapist, a counselor. A
Yeah.
coach should be pushing you forward. A counselor helps you unravel what's happened to you. So there's a different role that a therapist, I have a therapist. I've seen a therapist for 4 years. I started in COVID. I've done it before, but I'm like, some months he gets a free check because there's not much going on. And some months I really need this. And I have, an earned PhD and 25 years of ministry experience. I need a therapist.
Yeah.
I need a counselor. Everybody needs a confidant. There's a great verse in the Old Testament, and we could talk about this some too. It's the difficulty of making friendships as a young adult.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a whole thing. Everybody says nobody talks about the miracle that Jesus had 12 close friends, right? As a young
You are
adult.
dead on the money.
So there's so much there. But there's a scripture in Second Chronicles, I believe, maybe First Chronicles, where it lists David's mighty men, and we
Yeah.
love that. And then the 30, and then the leaders, this and this, and it goes through all this list. And the very last one, I think it was Obed Edom, but it says, so and so was the king's friend.
Mm.
How's it? That's his job. Be my friend. I have a few guys that, they talk about ride or die. I only have a couple of those guys in my life, but those guys don't care. They don't care about my professional success. They don't care how much money I have in the bank. They don't care about whether I'm overweight or underweight. They don't care. They're with me.
Mm.
We're together in life. And you need at least one of those in your life, spouse ideally, but also men need one, women need one. You've got to have those five. You have those five relationships operating, and they don't all have to be present all the time at the same time. But over a period of 3 to 5 years, if you have those operating in your life, you're much more likely to be a very healthy, engaged person. So I don't know how I got on that. We kind of got
It's
off
so
topic.
good.
But so should we go back to the coaching piece, or where do you want to go with that?
I think it's so good just to even recognize like those five components can ultimately make or break the direction in life that you go, how you process things, how you unravel things, like you said, a therapist does, how you feel sharpened when a friend comes alongside you and you feel encouraged and seen, how you get poured in, but you also pour out. And I think when we look at the ministry leaders, whether they're leading young adults or their next gen, like they try to, we've come across so many people who try to do life alone or only with their spouse.
Yes.
And as they get older, as they're in their, mid to upper 20s, and then all of a sudden you hit 30, that gap when you're working with young adults gets bigger. Right. So it's not like, oh, I'm 25 leading the 18 to 24-year-olds. No, now you're 35 leading the 18 to 25-year-olds. Like, so even just as that gap grows, those people that come into our ministries or come into our form of our leadership are looking to us to become one of three things. So I would just love to hear your perspective. How do we manage attention as leaders when young adults come through our doors? And I have to ask myself, okay, am I discipling this person? Am I mentoring this person? Am I just pastoring this person? Or are they looking for me to become their friend and I'm no longer a young adult? What
You can't hang
insight?
out at night, all
No,
night
not
playing
me, man. Not
Fortnite. I got
me.
kids.
Not
I'm going
me.
to bed.
I'm like, I'll provide the opportunity for y'all to hang out, but I'm out of
Yeah,
here. So
right.
how do we, maybe for like the 25-year-old who's stepping into their first young adult role and they're like, I'm leading my friends, my peers, and people older than me, and I have four different hats of expectation placed on me at the same time. How do I function in the role that God has called me to be a young adult pastor for such a time as this in this church when they're expecting to be discipled, mentored, potentially even coached in that way? They're looking for a
Hmm.
friend. And like, what insight do you have for the person stepping in that's like, how do I navigate my own friendships when everybody's pulling at me to be something else or to switch hats in mid conversation of, do you want my opinion or do you want me to be your pastor right now?
Yeah. Well, and so here's what I would say. One of the things that I was never taught was the phases of personal development in leadership. Okay, so there are different phases that you will go through, and you need to understand what phase you're in.
Yeah.
And when people have demands that you can't meet, you need to have the courage to redirect them. So I'll talk about in your 20s, there's a four-step process. You're unconsciously incompetent.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what you don't know, and you're really
Totally.
bad at it. Like there's video games. My son's, hey, have you seen this? Nope, I didn't know it existed, and I'd be terrible at it. Okay, then you're consciously incompetent. I pick up the controller, and he's like, Dad, no, okay, don't play. Right?
Put it
I'm
down.
consciously put it down. You can't do this. You're no good. Okay, so you're consciously incompetent.
Yep.
Then you move into consciously competent, where you start acquiring some skills, some ability to handle different situations. And then you move to unconsciously incompetent, where you know so well what you're doing that he picks up a new game and he doesn't have to work with a controller. He doesn't have to figure out where within 30 seconds, he's operating the game in a way that I couldn't do. Why? Because he's unconsciously competent with the tools that he needs to do the job.
That's good.
So for a young adult leader stepping into these roles, they need to realize that in your 20s to mid 30s, you move quickly from unconsciously incompetent. They gave me a role, I didn't know what it required, to all of a sudden, I'm no good at this. Now you're going to have natural gifts and talents, which are going to carry you along the way. But natural gifts and talents must also be in, developed with structured engagement and character formation. So I have a four-step process of forming a leader: character, competence, culture, and vision. that 4 steps. You have to follow that constantly. And we're cycling through that. I'm at 51, cycling through that. But the first step is character. And for a young leader, the biggest challenge is admitting, I have no idea what I'm doing.
Yep.
I have no idea what I'm doing. But there are resources there to help you. And that's where, honestly, the mentoring really helps. Initially, you need a framework. You need scaffolding. A lot of people talk about leadership foundations and building leadership. I don't believe that even though I have a PhD in leadership, I can build your leadership. I can give you a scaffolding, but you build your leadership. And the reason conferences are difficult, the reason that all these things are difficult is because I can't bring leader X into my life.
Yep.
I have to be leader Y. And so you can provide some scaffoldings around that. So the scaffolding for a young leader stepping into this is talk to someone who has more experience than you. Talk to them about what they wish they had done, and talk to them about frameworks of how to make this work. When I church planted, I went through a church planting boot camp. Okay, my dad was a church planter. I grew up around it. I thought I knew. I was an idiot. I had no idea what I was doing. But I went to this boot camp and it provided some real strong frameworks. And so I wrote down vision, values, and like vision. No, I just it didn't really, it ended up being somewhat useless. But values, what are the things, figuring out your values, how you want to lead your ministry?
Yeah.
Those are the bigger questions. A lot of people want to figure out, how do I do this? Before they step back and they say, why am I doing this? What is it that I'm trying to accomplish? So what is it that you're trying to do in your group? Are you trying to build relationships? Are you trying to encourage personal development? Everybody's going to have a different agenda, but if the leaders understand what they are offering, then when somebody offers something that wants you to offer something, you have to be comfortable initially saying, I can't offer you that. And that's a real big challenge, because we feel like when we say no, we're actually betraying, I've got to be all things to all men. Well, Paul had a double PhD, 35 years of experience, 7 different languages, multiple experience. He could do a lot more than I could do at 22. I can't be all things to all men at 25. I have to be a few things to a few men and grow in that capacity so that later on, now I can step into multiple environments. Why? Because I have 25 years of ministry experience leading all sorts of different things. Figure out what the expectations are, figure out what you can offer, and be comfortable saying, well, I have time for coffee once a week. That's what I have time for. That's the reality of that. Also recognizing that you're unconsciously and you're moving into conscious incompetence. It's okay. It's where you're at. And it's amazing once you recognize that, how fast you can on-ramp into the consciously competent area. A lot of people think admitting that I don't know is a problem. No, admitting you do know, you can literally, they say you can learn a language in 3 weeks. I don't know, but I can get conversational.
Yep.
I've studied 5 different languages in 3 weeks. I can get conversational on a language. I can't have deep theological conversations. You can get conversational in the things that you need to be fairly quick if you understand the frameworks that you need to follow to get there.
I think that's so good. I think it just breaks it down even for us. I feel like anytime, so Josiah and I, we feel like we're pioneers. Everything we start is like ground zero, like nobody's done it. And
it's uncharted territory. It's like the theme of our life.
So I feel like I go back to that very first one, incompetent and what is it? Delusional?
No, unconscious.
They just said yes, or I just said yes to God. Here we go, Lord. What are we going to do? Oh my gosh. But I think it just helps hopefully decrease the fear of the first-time employer in a role that they're like, I don't know what I said yes to necessarily, and I'm willing to grow.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to bring those people into the process and admit that, hey, I don't know, but let's find out. And I'm going to get some mentors in my life. I'm going to get some team and volunteers and whatever we all need within our ministries. I would just be curious, Dr. Charles, where has your passion for coaching and leadership, where did that begin? Where did it stem from? Was it a need that you had that you sought out, or like just take us there for a minute of like where did this passion come from to get your even degree in leadership essentially?
Yeah, I have always worked with young adults, to be honest. When I was in college, I was like 20, and they gave me the young adults group. I'm like, these kids are older than me. How am I? What am I don't know what I'm doing. And I got started in life, and we're dealing with debt, and we're trying to get our first house, and we're trying to make all these decisions. My parents were missionaries, and so they couldn't be there beside us. Now, we had a phenomenal opportunity growing up in Europe, had a lot of independence, so managed a lot of stuff, but there was a lot of stuff I just didn't know that I had to figure out. And I kept thinking, man, if somebody could walk along and shortcut this process,
Hmm.
boy, would that be helpful. I would do it. Like the greatest thing I find when I was working at a university was with young people say, hey, you need to open up an Acorns account or you need to open an investment account. And they would do it. And I was shocked. But they're like, no, if somebody gives you good advice when you're a young adult, and actually you have to give more steps in that advice. Okay, this is the website, this is this, you've got to do that. So that was really part of what I wanted to do was invest in other people. I always wanted to serve the Lord. I've always been a storyteller, but I wanted to be able to help other people. It was, early stage of my career was more the life hacks and figuring, hack on, what can you hack? And I guess I was a predecessor to that of figuring out how could we do this? So finances, marriage, relationships. I remember the first time I ran into a psychological assessment, the DISC assessment. I'm like, oh my word, how did I not know this about myself? And how did they figure this out? My daughter, I was talking to her this morning. She goes, Dad, they do that in high school now. Well, we figured out a lot of these things. And so my passion has always been, how do I pass on something that would actually be useful,
Mm-hmm.
not inspirational?
That's good.
A lot of leadership formation, a lot is actually inspirational,
You're
which
so right.
last only about the effects are 72 hours long.
Oh my gosh.
So by the
So
time
you
I
go
leave
to a
the
conference.
conference, I made
Yes,
it home.
that's
I'm done.
exactly it.
Woohoo!
I get home, you got a diaper, you got, first crazy thing, and you're like, that's completely irrelevant to my life.
The adrenaline
So
wore off. The dopamine is gone.
Well,
the
I never looked at those notes
Holy Ghost
again.
goosebumps are out,
Ah,
and I've given my life to Jesus, and now you're trying to figure out, well, what does that mean on a day-to-day basis, and how do I walk this out? How do I reach the young adults in my city when we're
Mm-hmm.
all spread out? But the guy who spoke lived in an urban center where he had natural access to thousands of people. Or the guy was in a small group. I live in an urban setting, having to do all those translation in your head. So that's where I made the shift from, I want to shift my leadership from being inspiration to being application.
so good.
What do I actually do? And so that desire for, I think first, I didn't understand what coaching was. And so I did a
Yeah.
lot more mentoring. And so I
Yeah.
have a book on Amazon. When I turned 40, I thought I was going to die. Like, 40 was old, 40 is the new 25 or whatever. Yeah. But I sat down, everybody says life has taught me. And I'd ask them, what has life taught you? Well, and they give me one thing and that they wouldn't have much. And so when I was
Wow.
40, I said, okay, what are 40 things that I've learned?
Mm-hmm.
And so I began to do a lot of self-assessment. The idea, don't follow your dreams, discover your purpose. Um, the precedence of privilege creates the presumption and demand of right. I had all of these statements that I wrote down, and then I wrote out what they meant, and they became a book. They became the launch of the leadership blog that I've blogged at for 10 years. And now every single year I sit down and I say, I'm 51 this year. What were 51 things that I learned this year?
Hmm.
It's such a powerful thing to sit back and say, this is what I've learned. And then I put those out into the world so that hopefully somebody else can grab onto those and like, oh, wow, that's really good. Or tell me more about that. So that's where the mentoring piece started. Um, you know, People tell you follow your dreams. I'll just use that one. I heard that all the time. Follow your dreams. I'm not a big dreamer. I'm not a big dreamer. I'm a creative and I see possibilities, but I wasn't a dreamer. But when I discovered who I was and my purpose in life, then every single context that I'm in, I can live in the fullness of who I am.
That's
So
good.
I've been undercover missionary with Muslims. I've worked in universities. I've been a church planter. I've been a university lecturer. I now coach and mentor full time, do a little Bible school teaching. Now I train other people in coaching. But every single context, I'm the same person at my core.
I love that.
And once I figured out who I was, that story doesn't change because that's the story God wrote on my life that I'm trying to live out every day.
Oh my gosh. I think what we're talking about, Charles, is unlocking the future and unlocking the future you. For the listener, like there is destiny, there's purpose that you have in your life. Part of why you're tuning into today's conversation
Hmm.
is you're longing for the breakthrough that God has. You're longing to maybe reach young adults for Christ in our world and in your community. I have a follow-up question that kind of goes back to coaching, and it's the whole kind of rivers versus just even the Dead Sea and the Sea of Galilee metaphor that you were talking about. What I'm hearing you say is there's almost two ways to keep the water living inside of you. One is to share it with somebody else, mentee, or two would be to have a coach draw it out of you. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
no?
Yeah. Um, the well, let me ask. Like, can I flip it on one of you guys?
Of
Yeah.
course.
Do a little sample thing. Who'd like to go, Micah or Josiah?
It doesn't matter. Surprise us.
Okay, Micah. Let's do
Hmm.
two kind of scenarios, and I want you to just record your emotional reaction to what I'm going to do here. Okay.
Okay.
So, Micah,
Warm
what's
up.
what's one of the biggest challenges that you face right now?
Oh,
Practically every day. What's the big
every
challenge that
day.
you face?
I think it is a tension of being a mom of two, coming up on three, and running alongside Josiah with a nonprofit ministry and not feeling guilty by being in one when I'm not in the other. So when I'm with my kids, I'm thinking about work. I'm like, oh, I have so many things to do. And I'm like, okay, now I feel a little guilty because I want to be present. And then when I'm at work, I'm like, oh, I wonder what my kids are doing. I'm like, oh, I'm missing out on something. So I think I don't know if it's mom guilt, if that was what you would label it, but it's managing that tension of what am I missing out on, but what is God calling me to? Because He's called me to both. And I realize that it's just recognizing and managing that tension and being present where I am.
And that's a huge. So here's reaction number one. What I'm seeing is a generational challenge of FOMO, fear of missing out.
Hmm.
And so the FOMO creates an environment where you can never be fully present because things are always happening around you.
Right. Yep.
Okay. And so what you're not realizing though is that the fear of missing out is actually causing you to miss out.
Right. I totally would agree.
So then the challenge for you, now let me switch. That was mentoring. Okay. Here's a little coaching. What have you done that has allowed you when you are fully in the moment? Tell me a story of when you were fully in the moment. When was the last time you were fully in the moment?
Oh, man. I think the weird thing is with what I just shared is like I can shut work off, but we also work from home. So I have to compartmentalize the room with what that room is associated with. So I'm most present outside of the house, probably because the house is raising kids, being married, cleaning, doing laundry, everyday personal household chores, in addition to leading a ministry from a workspace, if that makes any
Mm-hmm.
sense. So out of the house, I'm probably more engaged than I am in the house.
Okay. And in those two, you gave me two examples with the kids and with ministry.
Uh-huh.
And you've told me out of the house is the best place to be present.
Yes.
So if you were going to make a plan to be fully present at work and or fully present with your kids and you cannot use your house, what would you do?
I think number one is offsite work days would be like coffee shop, park it there, pack everything I need. I think outings and building adventure with the girls would be like, hey, we're going on a walk. We're going out to the river. We'll get some ice cream. So anything activity, even in the backyard, is still physically out of the house where we can unplug and sit by the fire or just swim in the little swimming pool and stuff like that. So I would leave the house essentially,
Mhm.
physically leave the house.
Which, Mark Batterson writes about space as purpose, and
Um,
we have different spaces and purposes. So that's really important. But looking back at what I just did, which was just two simple questions.
Mm-hmm.
One I put in, the other I pulled out. Which
Mm-hmm.
actually felt more empowering?
Putting me personally, like putting an action plan to my problem.
so it was
So a
when he was
second
coaching.
coaching.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
the coaching, yeah, exactly. Because we reach a point where mentoring is about presence, about having somebody come alongside you and walk with you. But there's something empowering about agency. I didn't give you any power. I have no power over you. And so I really struggle, honestly, with this leadership buzzword of empowerment
Mm.
because I only have the power over you that you give me.
It's almost like imaginary permission,
And no,
right?
I love that, Micah. Josiah, I love that because that's what it is. With so many young adults that I work with,
Yep.
all I did was saying yes, yes. My daughter's like, I was asking her what story should I tell? We did a fashion show at our church. Average age at our church when a church plan was 27 years old.
Oh my
Hundreds of young
gosh.
people.
Be
Oh my
so
Um,
gosh.
fun.
it was blast. It was chaos. It was
Was
it
this
was
in
everything.
Canada?
No, this was in East Africa.
East
When I
Africa. Oh
was
Oh,
my
in
that's
word.
East Africa
awesome.
in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. And
Wow.
so we identified a problem. Well, I identified it because the process that would happen is young adults would come to our church, and we were so crazy that the parents thought we were a cult.
Mm-hmm.
And so the parents would show up to make sure that we weren't a cult. And then the preaching of the word was so solid that they would stay, even though the peripherals they didn't love because it was crazy. The dance teams and the hip hop and the theater and all this kind of crazy stuff that was so much fun. So some of the older moms came to me and they're like, Pastor, which you're in trouble when somebody calls you pastor because nobody calls me pastor. They call me Charles. Okay, my name is Charles. Jesus calls me Charles. You should too. Okay, so pastor, when are you going to tell the girls to dress appropriately? Because it's hot and we in a theater and some of the girls in the movie, and you're looking down their shirts and it's just not a good situation. It's a legitimate problem that is causing distraction. Well, the typical answer was me sit down and I'll have a conversation with the worship team or whatever about appropriateness up front. Da, 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 da. Well, but that's not empowering. They make the choices. I can impose that on that. I can set artificial ideas, or I could stand up in front of my church and say, "I'm tired of the complaints. Why don't we create beautiful clothes for these young women to wear so they don't have to wear trashy, not classy? Something that they would really enjoy." Well, turns out I had three fashion designers in the church, three
In
other
the
people who
world.
were in sewing. We had six fashion designers. I'm like, hey, why don't we do a fashion show? Now, you guys can't really tell, but I am not a fashion guy.
Not a
Like,
fashionista or I don't know what a
I
guy
am
would be.
so bad that some of my friends, when I started doing my itineration cycle as a global worker, you travel around and you share your story, and people will give you monthly support and send you on. I'm so bad that a couple of my friends took me to the Mall of America and said, "Charles, we're going to buy you some clothes. Like you don't look good." Okay, so I'm not a fashion guy. Just putting that. We ran a full-on fashion show with runway and hundreds of people, and the whole marketplace came. Why? Because I gave them imaginary permission to be who they already were.
I love it. So good.
We called out the giftings and the talents. Erwin McManus said, "There is in the harvest everything that you need." And I hear guys complaining all the time about lack of resources. Like, there's in the harvest. Jesus never gave us a lack in the harvest. You'll find organ players in Montana in little towns. Why? Because they needed them. And so, as a young adult, you will have who you need. The problem is they will not come to you perfectly wrapped in a bow. They
Right.
come with edges. They come with issues. And we get to walk alongside people as they figure it out. So this imaginary permission or this giving people permission, if you truly understand your values, permission becomes very easy to give. So going back to your question, Micah, feels very empowering to actually make choices.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a framework in which you make those choices, right? Family, ministry, Josiah, I have frameworks around my life. Within that, it feels very empowering to make those choices. Okay, because you're not working for someone, you're starting something from scratch. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you a little example. When you really understand values that are actionable, they're not aspirational. A lot of people have these aspirations on the wall. I'm like, well, what does that mean? It means who we aspire to be. Yeah, well, you
Yeah.
can't do anything with that. It's back to the inspiration. So we had three core statements: Christ, culture, community. Can we preach Christ? Can we create culture? Does it build our community? And any leader who wanted to do something, when they came to me, I would say, have you run it through the filter? And if you come out with yes on the other end, my answer is always yes. My answer is always yes. Now, we may not be able to fund it. It might not be right now, whatever. But my answer to the idea is yes. If I understand those values, we can put actions to them. And it keeps me from being a leader who leads from my own personal preferences. I'm not a fashion guy. I don't like fashion. I would never go to Milan and watch people walk up and down the runway. I wouldn't do that. But because my personal values, the values were actionable, we could solve a problem that came up with something that I didn't like to do. So it wasn't based on Charles's personality. It was based on what we valued as a community. And so spending the work up front to figure out what values are actually actionable, it sounds theoretical, but even for your personal life, we used to do this thing with our kids every night. What does it mean to be a porter? Strong, brave, trust Jesus, grateful, loving, handsome, obedient, and like myself. And my kids would say that every night: strong, handsome, obedient, grateful, loving, handsome, love Jesus, whatever it was. And they would say that every single night. Guess what? That's what my kids are today.
That's awesome.
That's what my kids
I
are
have a
today.
question. Do you have a question? I want a follow-up question here.
Just a quick comment on that.
Yeah.
There is it's a super popular book right now called The Habits of the Household. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
I'm just looking up the name of the author. We were just at a conference where he spoke. Justin Whitmell Early, and he's like an attorney, but he did what you did, and he documented what you just said. Like he had three or four boys, and
Yep.
bedtime was just a wrestling match, and he's like, this is not the way it was meant to be. And so he just would make liturgies of the ordinary, a mealtime prayer, a bedtime, and just kind of these liturgies or sayings. And it was the values of a family. And I think he's doing a tremendous job empowering parents, giving them this imaginary permission to come up with what are your actionable values as a family, and then how do you declare these over your children and have them declare it over themselves. And I think the same thing is true within young adult ministry. Like whether young adults are coming to you with doubts and wrestling and deconstructing their faith, or whether they're coming to you with spiritual gifts and ideas and visions and passions and excitement. What a powerful challenge for you as the leader to take the coach approach and to be one who believes in, to believe one who empowers, or to be one who says, hey, this community is going to be a safe place for you to wrestle, to deal with doubts, to have conversations, to ask really hard questions that you might wonder if it's okay to ask here. You can ask here. This is a place where you can experiment. It's a little bit more like a laboratory or classroom, and you can try some things like a fashion show. And if it succeeds, we're going to celebrate. And if it flops, then we learned something and we learned it together. And so, man, I think there's so many tangible ways to apply what you were just saying. But Micah, you had
Oh
a
yeah,
follow-up.
I just have a question. I just had a question because I think so many times we come across in the Western culture, like there's a lot of insecurity in leadership. where they have maybe set the vision. Like, I'm the lead pastor, I've set the vision for the church. And yes, you have your people in place, your board of elders or your boards and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, here's the vision. How do we not lose the vision, implement the values that are actionable while giving imaginary permission to people? Is that the filter we talked about with Christ, culture, and community? Or
That was
how
our
do you,
filter.
that was your
That was
filter?
our filter. That's what
Yes.
we had done the work. So I'm going to say something that's maybe a little controversial here,
Please do.
but I think it comes from the scriptures. We need to, and as an older pastor now, I think I can speak to guys. We need to stop embracing the Moses vision and start embracing the Antioch vision. So let me
Hmm.
give you what
Yeah.
Moses is. Moses is the man goes to the top of the mountain, hears from God. He gives them exactly what to do. He walks off the mountain and for 40 years fights everybody about getting where they're supposed to go.
Right.
There's a lot of that in the church today, isn't there?
That's kind of maybe what my question stems
Because
from,
we
unknowingly.
want the man of God,
Yeah.
Pastor, you give us the vision. Well, and then if we don't like it, it's, well, God told me, so you're fighting God. You're fighting the man of God. So you can't have questions. You can't challenge. You can't redirect because you're fighting. I heard from God.
Yep.
But they did. They fought him for 40 years. And ultimately, his own internal anger issues and frustration issues kept him from walking into the promised
Right.
land.
Yep.
The model is different in the New Testament. Jesus leaves. You have a group of people. They sit down and they say, how do we walk together to fill these leadership voids? And then we move to Antioch. And in Antioch, we see the first multicultural leadership team. We see 5 different cultures. There's a man from Cyrene, a man from Africa, a man from Greece, a Roman, and a Jew. And together, if I remember right, some of your Bible geekies maybe get me on that list, but I think that's exactly where they were. But together, it says they were praying, and it doesn't say Paul discerned that God was setting him apart. It doesn't say Barnabas discerned. It says as they were together praying, the Spirit said to them,
Mm-hmm.
set aside Paul and Barnabas. Nobody argued. Nobody fought this. Later on, we see the Council of Jerusalem. Peter, they come because they have this whole thing, or was it before? It was before the whole thing about speaking in tongues and Cornelius and Gentiles receiving the faith. And they brought it, and the council together discerned what God was saying. And then when some people go up to Antioch and say you have to be circumcised, and they go down and they says it seems good to us in the Holy Spirit. So this, how do we build a vision? A powerful vision is a communal vision. Now you may have a spokesperson for that vision, and the senior pastor needs to be the leader. The ministry leader needs to be the spokesperson for that vision. But it doesn't mean that it has to come from them. I've talked to guys, a lot of leaders are not visionary and they feel inferior. I tell them, borrow one. Beg one. Find a visionary in your church and ask them, what should we do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, discern together what is the voice of the Spirit saying to us. And then once you have that, then you have your emissaries. And those visions become very, very powerful because you take 2 guys out of Antioch and the church goes on just fine.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The church, they go just fine. The apostles leave Jerusalem and the church continues just fine. Why? Because it's not dependent on one person to get the vision. That may, the implementation and the CEO and all that. You guys have a vision for your ministry. Okay. But if you were taken out, would your ministry continue?
It's a great question.
And so but if there's a group of people who've
Mm-hmm.
come up together and really nailed down this vision, then it's not that the leader is interchangeable because you are uniquely created for the condition in which you're in. God has placed you there. And every time you say, Lord, I can't do this, you're saying, God, you made a mistake. He's asking you He's divinely appointed you into the positions that you're at, sometimes so that you can fail, sometimes so that you're over your head, but generally you can do exceedingly abundantly above all that you could think or imagine because he's doing it through you. We're capable of so much more than what we think. And to get the place where we understand the group vision, the communal identity, there's not a town in America that doesn't have a church that says they have a young adult ministry. Whether or not they're actually engaging and pulling people, those can be questionable, right? But who are the people who say, God, if God's speaking to you guys, he's probably speaking to some other people. And I think you've shared stories that you're starting to hear this rumbling, this moving, and he begins to put people together. Well, there's such a power in together.
I love it.
I'm with you. Man, I guess the last question that does boil back to the coaching approach, it's kind of like where my mind goes. And I think a lot of our current season of ministry, whether it's local stuff in our church, district stuff in the state of Minnesota, young adults today, West Coast, or wherever, I find that much of our time and much of my time is in productivity and producing, and whether it's putting out a podcast, whether it's event planning, whether it's leading teams and the ministry forward, training on how to start a young adult ministry, how to strengthen a young adult ministry. And so I'm like, okay, is is coaching something that you can self-coach, or why is the feedback of finding someone who can draw out what is inside of you, why is that so challenging to find?
Can you self-coach? Yes, you can self-coach. I actually do a class where I teach people. Well, I teach the basics of coaching. Okay, so I've become a coach trainer now.
Right.
Train coaches, and I will coach myself sometimes through the problem. But the truth is that if I could solve the problem, I would have solved the problem.
Right.
And there's usually a hang up. And honestly, I charge for coaching, even a small amount. Why? Because when I pay for something, I want value from it.
Totally.
And like you
Totally.
said, you would show up to the coach, and you're doing your homework last minute because you're like, I got to get this. Why? There's invisible permission that you gave that person to have influence over your life. Why is it hard to find? Because one of the lies that young leaders believe is I have to have the answers. I should know. They made me the leader. That means that I know more, that I'm more powerful than. No, that's not what it means at all. It means probably that, you showed a heart and an aptitude, but if you knew everything about what it took, you would be at a different place in ministry already. So finding a coach ultimately, and this is the powerful thing about finding a coach, if you find somebody who's just asking questions and having conversations, that's not a coach. Coaching is actually a professional skill where you lead people through a thinking pattern. And the reason a coach is so valuable is because they have tools to take you from stuck to action. I probably should leave the house. I should do this or this. And then I would have asked, Mike, a few more questions. Okay, then what days are you going to choose? What's realistic within your schedule? And help you to actually make concrete decisions. I had some guys I was training and coaching a few years back, and one of them was like, I was doing a sample session. He said, Charles, you're a success bully. What are you talking about? I said, because so often when we make decisions, when am I going to start my diet? Next week. Next week, when? Well, I'm going to start on Monday. Well, what are you going to do different on Monday? Well, I'm going to not put sugar in my coffee. Well, what time do you have coffee? 7 a.m. Okay, 7 a.m., 7:15 next week, text me, say I didn't put sugar in my coffee.
Yep.
That's a movement of I want something I'm actually putting actionable plans into place. It's not just a vague conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Leaders love theoretical deconstruction conversations, church conversations, growth conversations. What am I actually going to try? What am I actually going to do? And those conversations, when we actually do those, they end up being much smaller things than what we think, but they become the stepping stones to much bigger success.
So good.
Now, let me just throw one thing in here. Jesus' ministry. Jesus had some hundreds of conversations. If I remember my numbers right, he started like 70% of them with a question. Who do you say that I am? Who touched me? And if you look back and look at everything Jesus did with a question, it was always very, very specific. But he wanted the people to engage the idea before he came in and delivered the content. Go back to the Garden of Eden. In the Garden of Eden, God says, Adam, Eve, where are you? God's not confused that they're naked in the bushes. God knows where they're at. They don't know where they're at. A coach doesn't tell you where you're at. A coach helps you to understand, helps you to figure out where you're at. And that becomes a real gift because once you know where you're at, then you can know where you're at in relationship to other things.
Oh my gosh, I'm with you because when you look at you had talked about DISC and just different self-assessments. I'm a nerd about that. Any of them. We try to take them all because there might be something that it's like holding up a mirror. And really, that process of self-discovery is so valuable. And I agree, like coaching, if it can help you move from stuck to action, I think that's why so many of us, myself included at times, feel like in a season of stuck or feel like there's so much more in store. Any last thoughts on coaching or encouragement that's on your heart for young leaders?
I would just say invest strategically in yourself. So for 18 years, the state invests in us and does education. For 4 years, we invest in college. And then after that, we sort of invest in um, randomized high school. Honestly, conferences are a lot like high school. They throw a lot of stuff at you and hope that something sticks.
Yeah. Yep.
Not bashing conferences. I've gotten wonderful stuff. Got to meet Erwin McManus a couple times. I mean, the guy's a genius. I love that. But coaching, investing in yourself by hiring a coach and even a paid mentor,
Mm-hmm.
there's people that you might have access to that you don't think you could get access to. John Maxwell's kind of the guru of leadership or whatever. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a huge, like, I haven't read any of his thing in a long time, but you should read the early stuff that he said. But one of the things he said that blew my mind as a young leader, he said he called all the good leaders that he knew. And he said, I'm going to be in your town. And they would schedule their vacation so he could be near a great leader. And he would say, I will pay you $100 to have lunch with you, to buy you lunch.
Hmm.
Now, this was in the 70s when $100 was, probably equivalent to about 12. I pay you $100 to spend an hour with you. He said the value that I got out of that was mind blowing. And
Hmm.
so think about the people that you would like access to. Think about the people that you would like to mentor you. And think about the possibility of finding professional coaching. And it's not going to be cheap. It's not going to be easy. But I tell you, it's going to accelerate your rate of growth in individually and professionally beyond what you can get of just trying to figure it out. And, don't try to figure this thing out by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Literally. And podcasts are great. I've learned so much. I learned constantly from podcasts. But I have a mentor, I have a coach, and I call and say, John, what do I do? And he goes, what do you want to do? I'm like, no, I want you to tell me. He's like, no, I'm not your mentor. I'm your coach. And
Yep.
it's a great, great process. So I think investing in yourself is a phenomenal, just make a part. If you invest in Netflix, what are you
Yep.
investing in? Relaxation,
Yep.
right? You're investing in Prime. What are you investing in? Convenience.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't we have a budget for coaching,
That's
for
good.
personal growth?
It's beautiful. You're dead on the money. I think there's a lot of stagnant leaders because of the sporadic investment of I'm going to go to this conference and spend the money here. And I really have viewed kind of stadium conferences that I've been deeply inspired by in the past too, but it goes back to inspiration and action and application. Like I think, for example, Catalyst may have been the conference of yesterday, and I
Mm,
think smaller retreats are kind of the conference of tomorrow, or certainly the conference of today, and coaching that feedback of like, I know personally with what limited time and then resources I have, do I want to pursue a doctorate degree? I'm open to it, but it's got to have the feedback and the pieces that I'm looking for. Or do I want to be a part of a mastermind? Maybe, but probably not, because what I'm really looking for is some direct feedback versus, you know, a talk from that I could get on a podcast or on YouTube.
that's the thing. You're paying for presence at these, you're paying to be in the room with these people, but really, hopefully, you're paying to have the experience with other people.
Yep.
Right.
Can you listen to a podcast? Can you get information? Sure. But the power of presence and the power of your story. So you talk about loving these assessments. I will offer for the first 50 of your listeners an assessment that I normally charge $250 for the debrief. Okay, it's called the Motivational Core. Well, I'll send you guys a link. The first 50 that write me, I'll let them take it for free. I won't do the debrief for free because it's an hour debrief. They
Yep.
can figure it out. You can read it, but the debrief is really powerful. But this storytelling approach was so different for me. You literally start by telling stories of when you felt successful. And I do this often with people. If you ask people about their stories of success, they'll tell you everything you need to know about themselves. It's kind of creepy. It's super fun. But the assessment will do that job as well. So I wanted to offer that kind of as a practical giveaway
I love
for
that.
some of
Thank
your
you.
listeners. But listening to people's stories happens when it's two-way conversation.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And we've become in love with this idea that discipleship and training is a one-way street.
Hmm.
And it's never a one-way street. It always is a two-way conversation. We say that about God. We say that about relationship with God, and yet we want to teach people about God, and we want them to walk into leadership without giving them the opportunity for that two-way conversation. So one of the top high-end things that I do with guys, high-end, whatever, more intensive, I call it a day to think. It's actually a day and a half. It's 12 hours. And we spend 12 hours. We walk through multiple debriefs. We do an entire work, professional, goal, vision, background, and we spend 12 hours together. We don't only get to what am I going to do in the last 2 hours. And in 12 hours of engagement, people, I see radical change. But why? Because I have to, and then afterwards I go and sleep for 2 days because I have to be, I'm fully present as a coach for that person there.
Yep.
And how many, we do podcasts, we do short form stuff. How many people actually say, I'm going to give you 2 days of undivided attention
Right.
to
Yeah.
invest in you? And it is life changing.
Wow.
But the idea, again, the two-way conversation is worth investing in.
Awesome. I love it. We've come to, unfortunately, the last part of our segment and final thoughts with the 5 and 5. We're going to put 5 minutes on the clock. Are you up for the 5 and 5 challenge?
Let's do it.
All right, 5 questions, 5 minutes. Question number 1 is, what is your dream in a sentence?
My dream in a sentence. A movement of disciples who make disciples of Jesus.
Amen.
Powerful. It's spot on. A hobby that we might find you enjoying on a day off or for fun.
2, I would say mountain biking and photography. I picked up photography in Africa, so you could find 500px.com/life cartographer. You can find some of my photography there. And I actually was pretty into it for quite a while. So a lot of African animals, outdoor wildlife type stuff. Something that I don't think people would necessarily associate with a middle-aged white guy.
I love it.
Do you know the name John Tyson?
I don't.
Okay, so he's a pastor from Australia, pastors church in the city in New York, and he like kind of like you, he has a whole photography website, and it's his hobby, and he's a great author, great pastor, great teacher, but that's been his outlet is photography.
Too
Mm-hmm.
fun.
Yep.
All right. Here is the curveball of all the questions. If you could ask Josiah and myself any question, what would you want to know today?
What what would you do different if you were to start your ministry over today?
Oh, which one?
I'll comment by saying, first of all, what's really fun about this conversation is you were the coach and you already have asked us both questions throughout, which is definitely engaging, keeps us on our toes. I can take a stab at this. Like, I think that there is a lot of fear or self-doubt, whether, starting a nonprofit or before that, we were doing campus ministry. Fundraising is something that you can relate to as a global worker. And I picked up a book off the bookshelf from 2008, and chapter two is just like, make the big ask. And it
Mm,
was just so simple. It was like a page and a half. And I'm like, yep, that's just what we need to do. And I think that there would be a lot less stress about the little things. And I think there would be a lot more faith built and a lot less pressure on myself or on us, and a lot more trust in the Lord, that recognizing He's our provider. I think, was it Erwin McManus you quoted that like everything you need is in the harvest?
mm-hmm.
Um, I think I would have doubted less, been stressed less, I don't know that I would have changed a lot other than been quicker, bolder, um, less stressed and less fearful. Would you add anything else
Oh
or
man.
agree with that?
I would agree with that, but also probably being less timid and shy. I think anytime you start something new to share your dream before somebody and expect them to understand it is like it's like putting a book out there. You're like, okay,
Yeah, I feel exposed. Like,
yeah,
hey,
is anybody
this is all just out there
is this
now.
gonna fall or is this gonna land on some ears that actually have passion for young adults? So I would say that, but also I would say giving ourselves space in our calendar before transition. So we literally had a 2 year old, not even a 1 year old, and a ministry all within 3 years. So it's like we had a newborn ministry, a newborn, and like a 1.5 year old, if that,
Yep.
16 months.
Yep.
So I think taking even just a month to like debrief, to breathe, extend grace, allow God to maybe breathe more on it, even though we knew what it was as a dream and as a passion, just so we didn't go from breakneck speed to breakneck speed.
I had, yep, we have an adopted son. We planted a church, had our first child, had our second child within 18 months. Church grew from 5 to 500 in 4 years and went through a medical diagnosis that completely changed our life on our older son, all in the space of 2.5 years. And it almost killed me. So
Mm,
I think if I could then feed back to you, one of the things I would say to young adult leaders is let Jesus do it.
Hmm.
Let Jesus do it. The church has been around for 2000 years and it's going to be around until he comes.
Hmm.
You have a moment in time that is important, that is critical. But it's a moment. Let it breathe.
Hmm.
Let it breathe. Nobody's expecting you to complete it by tomorrow.
hmm.
We put that pressure on ourselves
Mm-hmm.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Yeah.
unnecessarily.
To you, Charles, because that's powerful feedback. That speaks to me, and what a important reminder to let moments breathe and let Jesus do it. What's maybe the best advice that you've been given that you can recall off the cuff?
Well, I've got the book, 40 pieces I'd picked. The best, I'm just going to pull one up, okay? Because I've had so many people, but the precedence of privilege creates the presumption and demand of right. So the idea there was from former director for AGWM Africa, Mike McLaughlin. And he had a voice. I mean, he had a voice like thunder. He had an amazing voice. I wish I had it. It was really cool. But Mike would say it's amazing how things that were once privilege becomes expectation and then become demand. Simplest way to explain that, we provide coffee. Then we take away coffee, and all of a sudden everybody's upset because we took away what was a privilege. So the precedence of privilege. And so looking in my life, listen, it is a privilege and an honor to get to serve Jesus. I know people who would love to do what we do full time.
Wow.
I know people who would love to be trusted with a ministry and nobody's called their number. I know people who feel like they're overlooked, so the precedence of privilege, my life, what I get to do is a privilege. Does it come with sacrifice and suffering? Absolutely. Nothing great in the kingdom happens without suffering. Romans 5, it's very clear. If you want to make a difference in young adults ministry, prepare to go through difficult times and don't be surprised. But never forget that the precedence of privilege creates the presumption and demand of right. What was once a privilege, well, now I should be in charge. Now I demand to be in charge. And then it's no longer about Jesus, it's about me.
Right. Right.
So that applies in so many contexts.
It really does.
That's amazing. Okay. Last and final question. If you could leave the listener with one piece of encouragement today, what would you leave them with?
It's going to be okay. You are able to live the life. People will say, I can't do this and I can't do this anymore. Guess what? You will. You will. Like, how many times have you said, I can't do this anymore? And then you got back up and you did it. You are able, you're more capable than you have any idea of. And you have the image of God within you, and you have the Spirit of God who also, if you're a believer, comes alongside you and empowers you to clean off that image. We all struggle. We all struggle. Welcome to the human race. Welcome to the human race. Welcome to being normal.
Right.
I think we have this narrative. I'm the only one who's ever gone through this, of the prophet. All have forsaken me. And, the angel says, no, I got 500 just like you somewhere else. Right. You're not alone. Really. That would be that you can, and you're not alone.
That's
you might
good.
feel alone, but you're not alone. You're not. The Lord is for you, not against you. Just to understand that. Why is God doing this to me? Well, Christianity is the only faith where there's actually purpose in our suffering. So in Hinduism, it's karma. Your suffering is because you earned it. In Buddhism, it's an illusion. In Islam, it's balancing the scales. It's punishment. In Christianity, we have the only faith that says God is using this for his purpose and for his glory. And it actually can turn out for my good.
Beautifully said.
Really is. That is a
Love that.
promise to cling to, a reminder, something to rewind and listen to again, and just to journal about. Or, man, Charles, thank you so much for that word of encouragement. But your insight on coaching and mentorship and cross-cultural young adult ministry, we're really grateful for you, man.
Man, thank you guys for the opportunity to be on the show today.
This is the Young Adults Today podcast.
Hey everybody, this is Micah Cornelia again with the Young Adults Today. If you are loving the Young Adults Today podcast, you are going to love the FYI podcast. If you're between the ages of 18 to 30, we come alongside those people who are longing to get some of those questions answered about adulting, life, faith, finances, and so much more. So tune in. You can give us a direct message. If you are between the ages of 18 to 30, have some amazing questions. We want to point you not only to Christ, but to the Word of God and Scripture that can hopefully help navigate some of those big questions that you are currently up against.
In young adult ministry, a lot of times it feels like, well, you're maybe alone or on an island. And so Young Adults Today exists to help you build community in ministry, to have those friends that can last a lifetime, and then really to provide catalytic events like camps for young adults, conferences for leaders, as well as resources, including this podcast, but also a regular blog on youngadults.today, as well as books. And we have a book bundle. I'm excited to let you know about Reaching the Next 13 Ways Churches Can Engage Young Adults, about Next Gen Now, to really understand and engage the Gen Z generation, and then equip the saints, which is really, these are all collaborative books that we wrote in community, and they're best read in community as well. And so I would just encourage you to pick up your book bundle. While supplies last, they're 50% off. That's right, 50% off of these book bundles that are designed to help you thrive in your leadership, to grow. And really, again, when you can, for us, write these books in community, but also read these books in community, I think you'll be able to go further. I pray you're able to go faster. But visit youngadults.today/book, as well as the link is in the show notes to pick up your copies of these book bundles. We hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and we just wanted to create an opportunity for you to invest financially into the faith of the next generation. Young Adults Today is not only a podcast, it's not only conferences and camps. We do exist to reach young adults for Christ and to train leaders to do the same. But we're also a community network of young adult ministry leaders, and we're active to really provide events and resources to help you thrive in reaching the next generation for Christ. This ministry and nonprofit exists because of the generosity of viewers and listeners like you, our friends, our families, as Micah and I, and really we're extending that invitation to you. Your gift can scholarship a young adult to a camp, can scholarship a young adult ministry leader to a conference. It can provide really needed resources into the hands of those who need it. And it makes this podcast and all of the resources that we do, makes it possible. And we're so grateful for how these podcasts are growing and reaching and ministering, and also our camps and the conferences for leaders. We would just love to invite you. You can donate today by visiting the link in your podcast episode description, as well as by visiting youngadults.today and clicking on give. That's right. Visit youngadults.today and click the donate button. And we're sure grateful. It's really an honor to serve the next generation. And on behalf of young adults who are impacted in their faith, in their life, in adulting, in relationships and finances, in theology, and tackling tough topics and things like navigating life choices and decision making, we just want to say a great big thank you to viewers like you.